Dark clouds floated over the icy trees of Vora 7, a cold forest moon far from any main star routes. Thick snow covered the ground like a white blanket, and the wind made soft howling sounds through the tall black trees. The silence was broken only by the crackling of a burning escape pod, half buried in the snow. From the wreckage, a soft groan came. A slim figure, shaking and injured, slowly pulled herself out of the broken metal. Her skin was pale blue, her hair soft and silver, and her eyes glowed faintly purple. Her name was Lena, and she was not human. She was a Varelian, a peaceful race known for their telepathic minds and calm nature. Lena fell into the snow, her left leg twisted, her body covered in cuts and bruises. Smoke from the crash stung her eyes, and every breath felt heavy. Her mind reached out, searching for any voice, any signal from her people, but there was only silence. Hours ago, her ship had been attacked while flying through a dark region of space. Her people had no weapons, no soldiers. The attackers came fast and hit hard. Ships exploded, and fire filled the stars. In the middle of the chaos, Lena's escape pod was launched. She had blacked out during the fall. Now she was alone. She tried to crawl, leaving a trail in the snow behind her. Each movement sent pain through her leg, but she didn't stop. If the hunters were still searching for survivors, they would find her soon. She had heard stories of what they did stories. That made her tremble inside. Finally, Lena reached a rock formation and pulled herself behind it. The wind blew harder now, and snow began to fall again. She hugged herself tightly, her thin dress no help against the cold. Her breathing slowed, her heart beat softer. A small part of her wanted to keep fighting, but a larger part of her tired, hurt, and hopeless, just wanted to sleep forever. Far above the moon, orbiting silently in space, a small human scout ship floated near the edge of a crater. Inside, a soldier named Rick sat looking at a glowing screen. His scanner blinked slowly, showing weak life signs from the surface below. He leaned forward. Still alive? He whispered to himself. Rick was a soldier from Earth, part of the front line. Aid Corps, a team that helped rescue survivors from battles in far-off systems. He had been sent to Vora 7 after the Varelian ship's crash had been detected. Most believed no one survived. But Rick's instincts told him otherwise. He put on his coat, grabbed his scanner and gear, and stepped into the drop pod. As the pod launched, Rick looked through the window and saw the dark moon below. "Hang on," he said. "I'm coming." The drop pod hit the surface gently, landing on a flat ridge. Rick stepped out into the snow, his boots sinking slightly. The cold air hit his face, and his breath became mist. His visor showed a flickering signal about 700 meters away. That was where the life sign came from. Rick moved quickly, careful but alert. The forest around him was quiet, too quiet. He kept his weapon ready, just in case something moved in the trees. As he walked, he saw signs of the crash-broken metal pieces, burnt parts of the escape pod, and scattered items that once belonged to the Varelians. Then, he saw something that made him stop, small handprints in the snow. They led away from the wreck and toward a line of rocks in the distance. He followed them behind the rocks. Lena barely opened her eyes. Her senses were weak, but she felt something footsteps, close and heavy. Not like her people. Something else. Fear rushed through her body. She couldn't run. Couldn't fight. Rick stepped closer, slowly and carefully. He saw her then, a small figure curled up in the snow, barely moving. He lowered his weapon at once and took off his helmet. "Hey," he said gently. "Can you hear me?" Lena didn't answer. She was too weak. But she saw his face. It was strange soft skin, no glow in the eyes, short dark hair, but there was no anger in it. No evil. Rick dropped to his knees beside her. He noticed the blood on her leg and the ice forming on her fingers. Without wasting time, he took off his thick coat and wrapped it around her. Then he touched his communicator. "This is Rick, Sector 9. I've found a survivor. She's alive but badly hurt. I need evac now." No reply, static. "Damn," he muttered. A storm was building in the sky. Signals wouldn't work for a while. Rick looked back at Lena. She had fainted again. He gently picked her up, careful not to hurt her more. She was light, and her skin felt cold like ice. "I've got you," he whispered. He turned and started walking back through the snow, carrying her in his arms. Somewhere behind them, the wind howled louder, and a strange screech echoed through the trees. Rick didn't stop. Whatever was coming, he would face it later. Right now, all he cared about was the small, broken alien girl in his arms. The wind was growing stronger. Snowflakes fell faster, turning the forest into a white blur. Rick struggled to move forward as he carried Lena in his arms. His boots sank deeper into the snow with every step, and his arms were starting to go numb. But he didn't stop. Lena's head rested against his shoulder. She was still unconscious, her breath slow and weak. Her skin was cold to the touch. Rick knew she wouldn't survive out in the open, for long, not in this weather, and not with those wounds. "Just hang in there," he said quietly. "We're almost there." He reached a rocky hill where he had earlier scouted a small cave for shelter. It wasn't much, but it would keep them out of the storm. Rick stepped inside and lowered Lena gently onto a dry patch of ground. He quickly activated a heat lamp from his pack, and warm light filled the cave. Then he opened his medical kit and started working. Lena's leg was badly cut, and there was a deep bruise on her side. Rick cleaned the wounds, wrapped them in clean cloth, and gave her a small dose of pain medicine. He didn't know how Varelians reacted to human medicine, but he had to try something. As he worked, he kept speaking to her softly. "You're safe now. You're not alone anymore." Lena opened her eyes for a moment. Her vision was blurry, but she saw the same human face again, the one that had pulled her from the snow. She didn't understand his words, but his voice was calm and kind. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Rick quickly held a small water tube to her lips. She drank slowly, then closed her eyes again. Her mind was still foggy, but her heart felt something new, a tiny spark of hope. Rick sat back and let out a breath. "That's better," he said. "You're strong. I can tell." The storm outside raged louder now, wind howling through the trees like angry spirits. But inside the cave, the heat lamp kept them warm. Rick placed his jacket over Lena and leaned against the wall, watching the entrance in case something tried to follow them. He activated his communicator again. "Rick to base. Do you read me? Survivor is alive but injured. Need medical pickup. Repeat, need pickup. Static." No answer. He sighed and looked at Lena. "Guess it's just us for now." Hours passed. The storm didn't stop, and the snow piled higher outside. Rick melted some snow to make water and ate a protein bar from his pack. He tried offering one to Lena, but she was still too weak to eat. So he just stayed close, checking her condition every hour. In her dreams, Lena saw flashes of her past. Her mother's soft singing, the glowing trees of her homeworld, the voices of her people speaking through thought. Then fire, screams, empty space, and falling. She woke with a sharp gasp. Rick was there at once, helping her sit up slowly. "You're okay," he said. "You're safe." Lena looked around. The cave was strange, and the man beside her looked like no one she had ever seen. His skin was light, his eyes brown, and he had no glow or mental link like her kind. Yet his presence was gentle. She pointed to herself and said weakly, "Lena." Rick smiled. "Lena, that's your name? Good, I'm Rick." He pointed to himself. "Rick." Lena blinked, then gave a small nod. They couldn't understand each other's languages, but some things didn't need words. Lena touched her chest and then pointed to the sky. Rick guessed she was asking about her people. "I don't know," he said honestly. I hope someone else made it. But I didn't see any other pods. Lena lowered her head, sadness washing over her. Rick saw the pain in her eyes, not just physical pain, but the pain of losing everything. He reached out and gently touched her hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. Later that night, as the storm roared outside, Rick kept the fire going. Lena was resting better now, her breathing more stable. She watched him work with quiet eyes, observing every movement. Humans were different, loud, warm, emotional. And yet, this one. He was patient, careful, and kind. She thought of how he had carried her, protected her, treated her wounds. Even when he had no reason to trust her, she tried to speak again. "Thank you." Rick turned to her, surprised. "Did you just say thank you?" Lena nodded slowly, a small smile spread across his face. "You're welcome." The night passed slowly. The snow outside kept falling, covering the world in silence. But in the cave, something had started to grow. Not just safety, but trust. A silent promise between two strangers from different worlds. One had lost everything. The other had chosen to stay behind when everyone else left. Now together, they had begun something neither of them could explain. A connection, and neither of them knew that this was only the beginning. The storm outside had not stopped. Thick snowflakes kept falling, covering the trees, rocks, and broken escape pod like a heavy white blanket. Winds howled across the forest moon of Vora 7, making it almost impossible for any rescue team to land. In the middle of that storm, inside a small cave, two strangers from different worlds were trying to survive together. Rick sat near the heat lamp, checking his scanner again. The signal was still too weak to reach orbit. He tapped the screen. But nothing changed. "No connection," he muttered. "Still blocked." Lena was awake now, sitting on the soft cloth Rick had laid out for her. She watched him with quiet eyes. She still couldn't speak much of his language, but she listened closely whenever he talked. Her wounds were healing slowly. The bandages Rick had placed on her leg helped stop the bleeding, and the pain medicine eased her movements. She still winced when she tried to stand, but at least she could sit and drink water without help. Rick turned to her and smiled. "How are you feeling?" Lena didn't fully understand his words, but his kind tone told her what he meant. She gave a small nod. Rick nodded back. "Good, that's progress." He took out a small energy bar and broke it in half, offering a piece to her. At first, Lena hesitated. Human food was strange to her. But her stomach growled, and Rick looked at her with encouraging eyes. Slowly she reached out and took the piece. She bit into it. It was chewy and sweet. "Not bad," Rick chuckled. "See, not poison." Lena didn't understand the joke, but his laughter made her lips curve into a faint smile. It was the first time she had smiled since the crash. The day passed slowly. Outside, the storm made the sky dark, though it was not night yet. Inside the cave, Rick began building a small wind block using stones and metal scraps to cover the entrance. The cold wind kept sneaking in through the gaps, and Lena's thin body couldn't handle too much chill. As he worked, he noticed her watching him closely. He turned and spoke softly. "You're curious, huh?" Lena tilted her head. She didn't understand the words, but she knew he was speaking to her kindly. She looked down, then picked up a small stick from the cave floor. Carefully, she began drawing lines in the dirt. Rick looked closer. She drew a circle with tiny stars around it. Then she drew a figure tall and slim with glowing eyes. A Varelian. She pointed to the figure and touched her chest. "Lena," she said again. Rick smiled. "Yeah, that's you." Then she drew another figure, shorter, with square shoulders, no glowing eyes. She pointed to it. "Rick," she said. He laughed. "You're an artist now?" She smiled again, a little more this time. Then Lena drew two stick figures standing side by side. She looked up at Rick, her eyes warm. There were no words between them, but the meaning was clear. "We are together," Rick nodded slowly. "Yeah, we're in this together." Later, Rick checked his supplies. Only 2 days of food and water left. The snow was still falling outside, but not as hard as before. Maybe tomorrow he could go out and try to find the old cum tower he had seen on the scanner map earlier. If he reached it, he might be able to send a strong signal, but he couldn't leave Lena alone for too long. She still needed rest. He sat down beside her and opened a small music player. He put one earbud in and handed the other to her. Lena looked at it confused. Rick gently placed it in her ear. A soft tune played, a simple piano melody from Earth. Peaceful, calm. Lena listened, eyes wide. Her people had music, but this was different. It was gentle and filled with emotions she couldn't explain. She closed her eyes and leaned against the cave wall. Rick listened too. He had played that song many times back home. It reminded him of quiet nights and starry skies. Now here, with an alien girl beside him, the music felt even more special. Time passed quietly. For a little while, the storm outside no longer mattered. That night, Rick stayed awake while Lena slept. He watched over her, checking her bandages and keeping the fire alive. Once, he heard strange noises outside, metal footsteps crunching through. Snow, distant clicks, and low growls. He grabbed his weapon and stood near the cave entrance, ready. But the sounds faded. Whatever it was, it passed without seeing them. Rick returned to Lena's side. She was still asleep, breathing calmly. He looked at her and whispered, "You've been through so much, but you're still holding on." He didn't understand why it mattered so much to him. Maybe it was the way she looked at him with trust. Maybe it was how she had started smiling again. Or maybe it was because, in this lonely place, they had found each other. Whatever the reason, Rick made a silent promise. He would protect her. No matter what. Morning came slowly. The storm had finally weakened. The sky above the trees looked clearer. Rick stepped outside briefly and saw the first light of day breaking through the clouds. It was time to move forward. He needed to find the tower, send the signal, and get them both off this frozen moon. But the path ahead would not be easy. Back in the cave, Lena sat up. She looked stronger than before. Her eyes met Rick's as he returned, and she gave a small nod as if to say, "I'm ready." Rick smiled. "Let's get out of here." The journey wasn't over yet, but now they had each other. And that made all the difference. The snow had slowed, and weak sunlight passed through the tall black trees of Vora 7. The storm was over, but danger still filled the air. Creatures moved quietly through the frozen forest, and the wreckage of the alien crash was still fresh. Inside the cave, Rick packed his supplies. He checked his scanner again. The location of the old cum tower appeared as a flickering blue dot on the screen, 2 kilometers away through rough ground and thick snow. He looked at Lena. She was sitting up now, dressed in the thicker coat he had given her, her silver hair tied back with a cloth strip. Her eyes met his with quiet strength. "You sure you're ready?" he asked gently. Lena didn't understand the full sentence, but she nodded once. She had rested enough. Her legs still hurt, but she could walk slowly with support. She wanted to move. To help, Rick gave her a walking stick he had made from a metal pipe. "Take this. Lean on me if you need." Lena held the stick, tested her weight, and took a small step forward. She winced but didn't fall. Rick watched her carefully. "You're tougher than you look." They left the cave together. The air was sharp and cold, but the storm clouds were breaking. A thin blue sky could be seen above the treetops. Snow crunched under their boots as they began their journey. The path was not easy. They moved through deep snow, climbed over fallen branches, and avoided open fields where hunters could spot them. Rick stayed close to Lena, always watching the trees and listening for danger. Once, a drone flew overhead. It was small, black, and fast, most likely sent by the bounty hunters who had attacked Lena's people. Rick grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her behind a snow-covered rock. The drone passed without stopping. Lena breathed fast, her eyes wide with fear. Rick looked at her calmly and pressed a finger to his lips. It's gone. She nodded slowly. Her heart pounded, but she felt safe near him. As they continued, Lena began pointing at things around them, strange trees, glowing blue plants, and tiny creatures crawling in the snow. She spoke in her language softly, trying to tell Rick what they were. Rick listened carefully. That one? What is it, food or poison? Lena smiled a little and shook her head. Not food. He laughed, noted. They walked in silence for a while. Then Rick started drawing shapes in the snow with his stick. A star, a sun, a tree. He pointed at each and said the earth word slowly. Star, sun, tree. Lena watched and repeated after him. Star, suan, tree. Her voice was soft but clear. Rick nodded. Good, you're learning fast. She pointed at the sky and said, Star. He gave a thumbs up. Yes, Lena smiled more now. For the first time in days, her heart felt light. This man, this human, was different from what her people had feared. He didn't want to control or harm. He just wanted to help. They stopped near a frozen stream to rest. Rick built a small fire using his portable burner and gave Lena a heat pack to warm her hands. He opened a packet of food and shared it with her. As they ate, Lena looked at Rick and drew a shape in the snow, a circle with a line through it. He looked at it for a moment, confused. She touched the circle and said, Varelian, home. Rick understood. That's your planet? She nodded. Then she drew a small dot far away from the circle. Here, Rick nodded too. Yeah, we're a long way from home. Then Lena did something unexpected. She drew a small shape between the two stick figures, side by side. Rick stared at the drawing. She pointed to one and said, Lena, then to the other, Rick. He smiled gently. Us. She nodded. There was a quiet moment between them. No storm, no noise, no fear. Just two people, alone in a frozen world, finding connection through simple pictures and shared warmth. They started walking again, slowly moving uphill. The trees began to thin out, and broken satellite parts lay scattered across the ground. Rick's scanner beeped louder. They were close to the tower. Then something snapped behind them. Rick turned fast, raising his weapon. A shadow moved through the trees, then another. Run! He shouted, grabbing Lena's hand. They ran across the snow, their feet slipping, hearts pounding. A laser bolt hit the tree beside them and exploded bark into the air. Rick fired back, forcing the enemy to take cover. Lena stumbled, but Rick caught her. We're almost there. He yelled. Ahead, the broken remains of the old tower appeared through the trees. Its dish was cracked, but the base still had power. Rick kicked open the door and pulled Lena inside. He slammed it shut behind them and locked it. Panting, he helped her sit. They're outside, he said. We have to send the signal now. Lena looked around at the control panels. Her eyes lit up. She pointed to one and spoke a word Rick didn't understand, but it sounded like connect. He nodded. Yeah, let's do it. Together, they began activating the tower. Rick typed in commands while Lena pressed glowing symbols. The old tower hummed to life. The signal reached higher, farther, and then ping. Connection. Rick quickly sent a rescue message to his command team. We did it, he said. Someone's coming. Outside, the hunters began to surround the tower. But inside, Rick and Lena stood close together. They didn't know what would happen next, but they were not afraid. They were no longer strangers. They were something more. Inside the broken tower, lights flickered. Dust covered the old walls, and some wires hung loose from the ceiling. But the main control screen glowed bright green. The signal had gone out strong and clear. Help would come. That much was certain. Rick let out a deep breath. Finally. Beside him, Lena stood holding onto the edge of a panel. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were full of light. She looked up at Rick and smiled. He smiled back and gave her a thumbs dash up dot, but outside, trouble was growing. The sound of footsteps in snow, sharp voices in a strange language, and the high-pitched hum of hunter drones surrounded the tower. The bounty hunters had followed them. They had found the signal and now wanted to stop it and take Lena. Rick checked his weapon. It had limited power left. He looked around the tower for anything he could use. There were old metal bars, storage crates, and wires. Not much, but maybe enough to delay the enemy. He turned to Lena. They're coming. We have to fight. Lena didn't understand all his words, but she knew what was happening. Her hands shook slightly, not from cold, but from fear. These were the same beings who had destroyed her ship. They had hunted her people without mercy. And now they were here again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Rick placed a small blade in her hand and gently closed her fingers around it. Only if you need it, he said softly. Lena nodded slowly. Then she took a deep breath and stood beside him. The first shot came fast, a red laser bolt that hit the outside wall and sent sparks flying. The door shook. Rick raised his weapon and aimed. Stay low, he told Lena. The door broke open, and two bounty hunters rushed in. They wore black armor with red lights and moved like machines. Rick fired twice. One dropped. The other ducked and returned fire. Lena shouted a warning and pushed Rick aside just before another laser shot hit where he had stood. He hit the ground and rolled behind a crate. Thanks, he said breathless. Lena ducked as more enemies entered. Her heart pounded. She could hear their angry voices, but she blocked the fear. Her eyes began to glow faintly. She focused not on their words, but on Rick, on his courage, on their connection. Then something inside her changed. Rick was trying to reload when he felt a strange warmth fill the room. He turned and saw Lena standing straight, her hand raised. A soft blue light glowed around her. Her eyes, once soft and quiet, now shone bright like stars. The hunters stopped, confused. One of them raised a weapon. Lena stepped forward. A wave of energy burst from her body, silent but powerful. The walls shook, and the hunters were thrown back like leaves in the wind. Their weapons flew from their hands. Sparks danced in the air. Rick stared, amazed. What was that? Lena looked at her hands in surprise. She didn't know either. But something had awakened. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was hope, or maybe it was Rick's kindness that had unlocked it. Whatever it was, she had found power within herself. More footsteps outside, more enemies. Rick and Lena knew it wasn't over. But now they had a chance. Together, they set traps. Rick placed metal rods near the door, connected to the broken wires, an electric shock trap. Lena, using her new energy, moved heavy objects to block windows and side doors. She wasn't sure how long her power would last, but she would use all of it to protect him. The next wave came harder. Drones flew in through a broken window, firing lasers. Rick shot two down. Lena sent a wave of force that smashed the others against the wall. A loud roar came from outside, some kind of large beast used by the hunters. Rick looked at Lena. Any more of that magic stuff left? She raised her hand and focused. A small spark flew out, but then faded. She shook her head. Rick nodded. It's okay, you've done more than enough. Then the tower shook. The enemy had brought something bigger, a walker or attack machine. The metal walls creaked, and the roof began to crack. Rick grabbed Lena's hand. We stay together, no matter what, he said. Lena held his hand tightly and nodded. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed across the sky. A blue light shined down from above. A ship, a human rescue ship, descended fast, guns firing. The enemy outside scattered. Some tried to run. Others fired back and were quickly taken down. The ship hovered above the tower. A voice crackled. Through Rick's communicator, Lieutenant Rick. We received your signal. Hold position. We're sending a team down. Rick laughed in relief. Took you long enough. He looked at Lena. Her eyes were wide as she saw the human ship through the broken roof. He pointed to it. Home, he said. Lena smiled. Not because she understood the word, but because she saw his face, calm and safe. Minutes later, soldiers landed beside the tower and cleared the area. Medics rushed in. One of them tried to take Lena away on a stretcher, but she grabbed Rick's arm and refused. She stays with me, Rick said firmly. The medic looked confused but nodded. Together, they boarded the rescue ship. As it rose into the sky, Lena looked down at the snowy forest, the cave, and the tower that had saved them. She knew her life had changed forever. Far above Vora 7, among the stars, two souls who once had nothing now had each other, and this was only the beginning of something greater. The rescue ship flew high above the frozen forest of Vora 7. Inside, warm lights and soft hums replaced the cold winds and gunfire from below. Rick sat on a medical bed, tired but alert. His arm was bruised, and he had a small burn on his shoulder. But he was alive. Across from him sat Lena, wrapped in a clean blanket. Her silver hair had been brushed, and her wounds had been treated. She looked peaceful, but her eyes kept drifting toward Rick. He noticed and smiled. We made it. She nodded slowly. Though the words were still hard to understand, his voice made her feel safe. A young medic stepped closer. Sir, we'll take the girl to the Varelian Center on Moonbase 5. Her people will want to find her. Rick's smile faded slightly. He looked at Lena. Her eyes showed fear. No, Rick said. Not yet. She stays with me. But sir, she doesn't have anyone right now. I won't let her be taken away again. The medic hesitated, then nodded. Understood. The ship arrived at the human base on Moonbase 5 a few hours later. Soldiers saluted as Rick stepped out, helping Lena walk beside him. Some of them stared at the strange-looking girl, but no one said anything. Rick was a known name, respected and trusted. And now, people whispered his story. He saved a Varelian, protected her through the storm, held the tower alone. In the base command center, Rick met with the captain. You disobeyed orders, the captain said. You stayed behind. Yes, sir. You risked your life for an alien girl. I'd do it again, Rick replied without hesitation. The captain leaned back and looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. You made the right call. Days passed. Lena stayed close to Rick. Though many tried to ask her questions or study her powers, she stayed silent unless Rick was nearby. She began learning simple Earth words. Food, water, safe. Rick. One evening, as Rick showed her pictures of Earth cities on a tablet, she pointed to a blue ocean and said, home. Rick paused. It can be, if you want it to. She looked at him. Her soft eyes, glowing faintly, held deep emotion. She didn't know much about human ways, but she understood care, protection, and love. A week later, a Varelian scout ship arrived. 3 tall, glowing beings stepped off the ramp. They spoke through thought, their voices echoing gently in the minds of those nearby. We seek Lena. Lena stood behind Rick, holding his arm. Her eyes were wide, unsure. The beings reached out to her with their thoughts. You are one of us. You are safe now. Come home. But Lena didn't move. She looked at Rick. He knelt beside her. It's okay. They're your people. But she shook her head. Then in a soft voice she said, You are home. The Varelians were silent for a moment. Then one of them stepped forward. She has bonded. Her thoughts are with you now. Rick blinked. Bonded? She has chosen. Our way is not to take. We will return in peace. They bowed slightly and left. That night, Rick sat with Lena under the stars on the base rooftop. The air was cool, and the stars shone like tiny flames in the dark sky. He looked at her and said, "You could have gone with them." She placed her hand on his. "You saved me, you stayed." He nodded. "And I'll stay, as long as you need." Lena tilted her head, then asked softly, "Always?" He smiled. "Always." Weeks passed. Lena learned to speak more clearly. She read human books, helped medics at the base, and sometimes used her quiet powers to calm injured minds. Everyone grew to respect her, not because she was alien, but because she was kind. Rick's feelings for her grew stronger each day. He didn't just protect her now, he loved her. He didn't know how or when it had happened, but it was clear in his heart. One morning, he walked with her through the gardens outside the base. The air was fresh, and small blue flowers had started to bloom. He stopped, looked into her eyes, and gently took her hand. "I don't have much," he said. "Just this life, but if you'll have it, it's yours." Lena smiled softly. Her answer was simple, yes. Later that month, under a quiet sky, on a peaceful moon, Rick and Lena stood side by side in front of friends from both Earth and Varelian worlds. He wore a clean uniform. She wore a soft silver dress. Her eyes glowed with joy. The commander spoke few words. Different worlds, one bond, a new beginning. They joined hands. No long speeches. "Just truth," Rick said. "I found her when she was lost, but she saved me too." Lena said, "He is my light, my voice, my home." They were married that day, not just man and woman, not just human and Varelian, but two souls who had found each other in the cold and never let go. And somewhere beyond the stars, the universe smiled. Life changed for both Rick and Lena after the wedding. They were no longer just a soldier and a lost girl. They were now partners, two hearts joined not by their race or planet, but by the bond they had built in the snow, in danger, and in trust. People across the moon base, and even far away on Earth and the Varelian homeworld, had heard their story. Some called it strange, some called it impossible, but most called it beautiful. Each day brought something new. Lena, now stronger and full of life, began working with peace officers at the base. Her calm mind and quiet power helped settle disputes. Sometimes she even healed others by touching their minds gently with her thoughts. Her glow, once dim, now shined with peace. Rick, still part of the rescue corps, trained new cadets and told them one truth again and again. Sometimes, saving someone else saves you too. He no longer carried pain from his past. The loneliness he had once felt as a soldier, always moving from one place to another, had disappeared the moment Lena held his hand and chose to stay. One morning, Lena received a message from her people. A small group of Varelians had returned to rebuild their lost world. They invited her and Rick to visit. The message spoke of new cities, of children learning to speak again, and of forests regrowing where fire once fell. It was not the same planet she had lost, but it was healing. Rick looked at the message and smiled. "Want to go?" Lena nodded. "Only if you come, always." They packed supplies and took a peaceful ship toward the Varelian world. As they entered orbit, Lena stared out the window. Her eyes filled with tears, but not sadness. Hope. Below them, silver blue forests moved in waves under soft light. Floating towers, glowing lakes, and clear skies showed how much had changed. When the ship landed, the Varelians welcomed them with open arms. Their thoughts spoke gently into Lena's mind. "You are home, and you bring peace." Rick was quiet. As they walked together across the soft grass of Lena's homeland, he didn't want to disturb the moment. But Lena turned to him and said in clear, warm words, "I lost everything, but now I have more than before." Rick took her hand. "And I found something I didn't even know I was missing." They stood there in silence, the wind blowing softly, the stars above still watching. The weeks on Lena's world passed gently. She spoke with her people, told them about life on Earth, and shared how Rick had saved her, not just from the snow, but from giving up. The Varelians, once distant and private, began speaking more with humans. They invited peace teams to visit. Walls between their worlds slowly came down, replaced by learning and trust. And it all began because one soldier stopped in a storm and chose to care. One evening, as the sky turned violet and twin moons rose, Lena sat beside Rick under a glowing tree. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked in soft words, now fluent in Rick's language. He looked up at the stars. "Sometimes. But I think my home is wherever you are." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then you're already home." They laughed quietly. The kind of laugh that needed no reason, just peace. Rick reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A tiny metal badge with a star symbol. "What's that?" Lena asked. "It's my last field badge. I'm giving it to you." "Why?" "Because I won't be a soldier anymore. I've decided to stay. No more fighting. No more running around." "In space." Lena stared at him. "You'd leave your job for me?" "For us," he said. "We have a life to build." She hugged him tightly. "Then let's build it together." Months passed. Their new home was made near the edge of the silver forest, where earth plants mixed with glowing Varelian trees. Together, they built a small house using both human and alien design strong. Warm, peaceful. Many others followed their path. Mixed families, human Varelian friendships, peaceful talks between old enemies, all grew from the story of Rick and Lena. Lena taught others about balance and healing. Rick trained rescue workers from both worlds. And in the center of the new city, they placed a statue not of war, not of power, but of hope, a human hand reaching out to a glowing Varelian one. People from every planet came to see it, children. Touched the stone hands and asked, "Is this real?" And the answer was always, yes. It started with a girl left in the snow, and a man who refused to leave her behind. Years later, as Rick and Lena sat on their porch watching stars rise again, he looked at her with the same gentle eyes he had the day he first carried her through the storm. "Still with me?" he asked. She smiled. "Always." And together, hand in hand, they watched a future full of peace take shape, across worlds, across hearts, and across the stars.